and the door that only opens at 3 a.m. There's a door in every city that only opens at 3 a.m. You don't see it in daylight. You can't even find the street. But if you're awake at the wrong hour with the wrong ache, the handle will be warm and the lock will yield like it was made for your hand. That's where this began for me, on a street that shouldn't exist, with a door I was never supposed to touch. My name is Rowan. I restore old buildings for a living, peeling back layers, learning the shape of a house by the injuries it hides. My partner, Eva, curates a gallery where paintings hang like loaded questions. We built a careful life, one apartment with 2 wardrobes and 1 bed that had learned our arguments and our apologies. For a while, our routine felt like grace. Then our nights changed temperature without warning. It was subtle. Eva became a little brighter leaving the apartment and a little dimmer coming back. She answered messages with a half smile she tried to hide and started using the phrase quick dinner like a spell. She dressed differently for errands, more deliberate, less casual. I told myself she was preparing a big show. I told myself I trusted her. I told myself 3 lies and called it patience. The first crack appeared in an ordinary sentence. We were on the couch on a Tuesday with bowls of cherries between us. She said, "He believes in the work," then winced as if she'd stepped on a thought and broken it. He, not they. I watched the pit she spat into a napkin and wondered if a cherry could bruise itself from the inside. "Who believes?" I asked, keeping my voice small. "A donor," she said too quickly. "A collector, the one I told you about." "You told me about 4, I said. "Which one is he?" She smiled without amusement. "The one who pays on time." I became a man who noticed shadows. Her phone face down by default. The lingering perfume I didn't know by name. The faintest red line near her shoulder, strap friction or a mouth that was not mine. I hate the person suspicion turns you into. He wears your face badly and speaks like a detective trying to impress a mirror. Still, I followed her once. Just once. I told myself it was for peace of mind, the same way people call a hangover a lesson. She walked 6 blocks with city night confidence, turned down a street I'd never paid attention to, and disappeared into a door that shouldn't have been unlocked. I stood outside with a heartbeat you could throw a coat over in here anyway. The door had no sign, just a brass handle polished by expensive secrets. At 3 a.m., the kind of club that calls itself a house opens for people who prefer their stories unrecorded. A musician friend told me about it once and then pretended he hadn't. Inside, the light was the color of old honey. Music moved through the rooms like a rumor. The space was a townhouse remade into rooms that chose you. Couples leaned close in corners like they were guarding the last candle in a storm. At the back, a private bar hid behind a sliding panel of smoked glass. I watched Eva glide toward it, her coat folding around her shoulders like expense. The bartender did not ask for her name. He already knew it. He arrived minutes later. Tall, salt and pepper hair cut to look effortless, eyes that said yes to himself more often than no. He shook hands with a woman I recognized from art columns, Saskia Reef, a dealer whose smile could turn Provenance into myth. He kissed Eva once on the cheek and once too near her mouth. I felt my throat tighten, not with anger but with recognition. I knew this choreography. I had done it once years before when I was younger and a stranger to myself. Performance dressed as inevitability. I told myself to leave. I told myself to be generous. I told myself to wait for proof. So I waited and watched him place a key on the bar between them, not a normal key. Brass, skeleton cut, too beautiful to be practical. He slid it toward Eva with a finger, the gesture practiced, like he'd rehearsed generosity as a trick. She didn't touch it. She kept her hands curled around the stem of her glass like a woman refusing a charm that worked. The key didn't belong to a house, it belonged to a room. Room 306, He said it softly for her, but the music split around the number and let it drift. My stomach turned. Not because of the offer, because of the specificity. Numbers are meant to disguise truth. That one unmasked it. They left separately. He first, as though he had been called by duty. She lingered until the ice in her drink melted, then walked out with her coat loose, confidence thin as fog. I followed at a distance that felt like cowardice. At the hotel, a renovated bank with marble floors that made footsteps sound like declarations, she stopped by a column and breathed like a person remembering her lines. Then she walked past the elevator toward the stairwell. I climbed 2 flights and heard the soft percussion of heels echoing above me, a private metronome. On the third-floor landing, a door clicked somewhere. I do not know why I put my hand on the cool of the banister and did not move. Maybe I was waiting for the past to interrupt the present. Maybe I wanted her to be the person she is when she's with me, tender and impatient, honest and unafraid. Maybe I was afraid of the shape my anger makes when I'm right. I didn't go to the room. I went home and sat in the dark and tried to name what had happened without giving it too much or too little weight. When Eva came in an hour later, her hair was wind-tossed and her mouth a little swollen, as if the night had kissed her roughly in saying goodbye. She took my face in both hands and kissed me slow, like she owed the evening a correction. It felt like finding a door that sticks. You push carefully, then harder, then you realize the swelling is structural. The frame has changed. "I love you," she said. The words were accurate and insufficient. I slept beside her like a person guarding a museum, alert to every creak of wood. At dawn, I walked to the river to talk myself down. The city looked clean and undeserved. On the railing, someone had carved 2 initials and a date, as if love needed a timestamp to exist. I decided not to accuse. Not yet. I decided to attend the opening at her gallery that Friday and see the story she was telling the world. If betrayal is a brushstroke, it always shows up on canvas somewhere. The opening smelled like rain and money. People stood in clusters, holding wine in a way that said they could afford to spill it. The show was called Edges You Learn Late. The centerpiece was a triptych of doors, all photographed at night, all slightly ajar, all revealing nothing beyond a lavender spill of light. In the reflection of the middle panel, too faint for most eyes, I saw the ghost of a man. Not me. Not any face I knew. The kind of man you imagine when you're young and think adulthood is a costume you grow into. Handsome, decisive, the angle of his jaw a promise. Saskia was there in a dress that made gravity reconsider itself. So was the man from the club. He moved through the room like a hypothesis people wanted to prove. Eva introduced him as Luca Montaldo, a philanthropist, which is a word that often means investor with nicer photographs. He shook my hand with a pressure calibrated to convey sincerity. Up close, he smelled like sandalwood and airports. "You must be Rowan," he said, studying my face as if it would tell him where I kept my keys. "Eva speaks about your work like it's a verb." "It is," I said. "Buildings do things. We forget that because they're tired." He smiled in a way that said he loved a good sentence as long as he could improve it later. "You have a beautiful home," he added casually. Something inside me leaned forward. "You've seen it." "Just the pictures," he said, taking a sip of wine he didn't want. "Eva shares her life when she's proud of it." He turned, already done with me. During the speeches, I stood in the back and watched Eva watch the room. She was radiant and remote, as if lit from a place I could not reach. People clapped. Luca's hand found her shoulder the way a signature finds the bottom right corner, automatic, proprietary. When it was over, she sought me with her eyes. I held them. We were 2 truths facing off in a room full of art. We left early, claiming fatigue. In the cab, she leaned into me and rested her palm on my knee like a keepsake. I wanted to say, tell me the story before it tells itself. Instead, I asked nothing and she offered nothing, and silence came between us like a neutral third party who charges by the hour. At home, she showered, and I stood at the window and watched the city perform its indifference. When she came out, skin flushed, hair damp, she crossed the room and pressed wet ankles against my calves like we were recommitting to gravity. She said, "Dance with me," and put her phone on the dresser and found a song we loved when everything was simpler because it was newer. We moved in the half-dark, our bodies remembering patterns our minds couldn't negotiate. When she touched the back of my neck, my lungs forgot what to do. We undressed with the care of people who know how cheaply tenderness can be spent. When I entered her, we both made a sound like relief. After, she lay with her head on my chest and traced the shape of a door on my skin with one finger. "If one of us is lost," she whispered, "which one is it?" "I don't know," I said, "but we're both walking towards something that doesn't like witnesses." "Is that how it feels?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "like the room is watching." She didn't answer. Eventually she slept. I did not. At 3 a.m., the hour that manufactures confessions, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, 306. No punctuation, no context, a coordinate in the night. I left without waking her. The hotel's night clerk recognized me from nowhere and from everywhere. Hospitality workers learn faces the way librarians learn whispers. On the third floor, the air felt staged. I knocked on 306 once lightly. The door opened as if it had been waiting. Saskia stood there, bare feet, silk robe, no surprise. She smiled the way only people who have decided who you are smile. "You came," she said, stepping aside. Inside, the room looked expensive without trying. Luca stood by the window, jacket over a chair, shirt unbuttoned enough to suggest not promise. Eva sat on the edge of the bed, dressed, hair braided, face composed like a sentence that won't end. "This is inelegant," I said, keeping my voice from breaking. "It is necessary," Saskia countered. "Artists rarely excel at logistics." Eva's eyes flicked to mine. "I asked them to call you," she said softly. "I wanted you to decide in a room where we couldn't pretend." "Decide what?" Luca poured water with the deliberation of a priest. "The foundation for the residency needs a public story," he said. "Donors like narratives. Couple rebuilds historic property into a space for young artists. A home becomes a house for others. You have the skills. Eva has the network. We have the money. The press will adore it." "Does the public story include your hand on her waist?" I asked. He didn't blush. "Everything includes longing. We can't afford scandal. We can afford rumor. Rumor turns attention into momentum." Saskia watched me with a kind of scientific affection. "The residency would be real," she said. "Not a prop. The desire is real too. You're not the villain here, Rowan. You're the wall load-bearing enough to hold people's mistakes." Eva stood. "Tell him the rest," she said to Luca. "Then to me, or I will." Luca's smile thinned. "There is a document," he said. "Draft only, no signatures, suggesting certain portrayals to create excitement, a flirtation arc. A delayed kiss never delivered. It confers no guilt. It sells possibility." "Possibility is the most expensive thing you can buy," I said. "Then you understand the terms," he said gently. "We keep our hands off what belongs to others. We keep our names out of the wrong mouths. We build something that will outlast desire." Eva was shaking her head. "I thought I could play the part," she said, voice breaking on thought. "But I stood outside this door and felt like a coat someone else would wear. I texted you because I wanted you inside the frame before we lied to the camera. You kissed him, I asked, finally letting the smallest cruelty out. The question sat between us like a crack in glass. No, she said. I kissed the idea of being professionally adored. It tasted like dust. Saskia moved closer, not to touch but to contain the moment. Rowan, she said, I ruin people for a living when they ask me to. Tonight I'd like to keep you. Say yes to the residency. Say no to the pantomime. We'll pivot. We'll announce a revision. We're boring and honest. Come be artists anyway. It won't get clicks. It will get respect. I can sell respect. Luca exhaled like a man remembering he has lungs. You're asking me to abandon a strategy, he said. I'm asking you to upgrade your appetite, Saskia said, without looking at him. He lifted his glass. Fine, he said, but we need an image. Eva stepped to me, close enough that our breath decided to agree. Let me hold your hand in the lobby, she said. Let people see the kind of heat that isn't for sale. You used me, I said, not to punish, but because numbing a wound helps your hands know where to be. I used the idea of you, she said, and it wasn't enough. I want you, Rowan, not the version of you that photographs well, the one who hates rooms with mirrors and still walks in. Saskia opened the door like a stage manager who trusts her actors. 3 minutes, she said. The night is almost over. We walked out together. The lobby was a bowl of gold. A man behind a fern pretended to read. A woman at the bar pretended to ignore. Eva took my hand. Luca offered a courteous nod that tasted like defeat dressed as manners. Saskia raised an eyebrow at the universe, and the universe blinked. Outside, the air had the Early's honesty. We didn't speak until the hotel shrank behind us. On the corner where the bakery would open in 2 hours, Eva stopped and faced me. You can walk away, she said. Today, I'll pack before you get home. And if I do? We build a place where the doors stay shut unless we want them open, she said. We stop practicing being interesting to people who don't know our middle names. We make something that has our fingerprints on it and no one else. Artists in residence, I said, surprised at how right it felt on my tongue. Artists in residence, she repeated, and 2 people learning the difference between a performance and a vow. We went home in a silence that felt like rest. In the kitchen, I made coffee too strong for now and perfect for later. She leaned against the counter and took my wrist and pressed her mouth to the inside, where the pulse cannot pretend. I won't be careful with you, she said. I'll be true. Be both, I said. We're old enough for both. That night we drafted the announcement with our names spelled correctly and our intentions unadorned. No choreography, no rumor. A home becomes a house for art, it read. And a door opens at 3 a.m. only if we're awake for the right reasons. We laughed at the last line and kept it anyway. We didn't become saints. Desire still knocked sometimes with the confidence of a courier, but we always opened together or not at all. In the gallery, people spoke about the triptych of doors as if it belonged to them. In our apartment, I fixed a hinge that squeaked like a confession and then hung a sign only we could see. It said, "Closed for renovation. Open by trust." I still think about the street with the secret door. I walk past it sometimes at sane hours and it looks like any other wall. But on nights when we can't sleep, we stand at our own threshold holding mugs of heat, and we practice the sacred, ordinary art of not opening. And on mornings that don't ache, we leave the door wide, just to watch the light learn our names.